Hello, and welcome to Conversations with Linda. I'm Linda. You know, I love a good conversation, so let's have one. Now, before we have our conversation, I'd like to give you a dose of good medicine. You do know that laughter is good medicine for the soul. So, how many tickles does it take to make an octopus laugh? 10 tickles. Get it? Tentacles? 10 tickles? So, now come on and let's go into our conversation. Now, last week, we had a really deep conversation. Our topic was daddy issues. And let me tell you, it really resonated with our viewers. I mean, the feed was lit up with comments, with just examples and illustrations of those daddy issues our viewers were having and have had. And so I thought that we would do a part two and bring on two of our guests, two of our viewers that had daddy issues and was willing to talk about them. So please welcome to Conversations with Linda virtually, Shanae Carawell and Valencia Spears. Welcome, ladies.
Hi, everybody. How are you?
Good evening, everyone.
Thank you so much, both of you, for coming in to share with our viewing audience and just being willing to be vulnerable and transparent as we talk about a subject matter that is huge. And I mean, although I understood it to be something significant, I did not realize how many people, especially in our viewing audience, uh, were still having this issue. Let me just start by saying that both of you shared that you had daddy issues as well. And I would like for each of you to share how that came to be. Was it a divorce, mom and dad divorce? Was it a death? How did it happen? Valencia, I'll start with you.
Okay. So, no, mine was not divorced. My mom and dad were never married,
Okay.
but they had me 30 years ago.
Hmm.
And of course, I'm the blessing. But
Hmm.
my mom and dad are not together, so I lived with my mom. My mom raised me growing up.
Okay. All right. And so that relationship never came to a place of marriage. Therefore, you were never in the home with your dad.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. What about you, Shanae?
Actually, very similar to Valencia's story. My mom and dad were never married either. I was never raised in the home with my dad. We did both live in the same city, but we were never in the same home together.
Okay. So did not being in the same home together create the daddy issues, or did it go further than that? Either of you can start that.
So for me, I can honestly say that the issues were not present or prevalent for me until actually like middle school going into high school, because before then, like as a child, so I've always been, I grew up very introverted, very to myself, and so being with my mom was always, that was it for me. Like I would go with my dad, but it was anytime I would go with my dad, I never would be there. So I would, anytime I would go, I would cry. Like I would literally cry time he gets me until it's time for me to go back home. And I would say, I don't want to be here. I want to stay with my mom. And so I wouldn't deem that as having issues as a child with him per se. I just would prefer to be with my mom. And so I didn't really experience the issues until I got older and had the desire of that father figure or wanting to have those conversations, but never had those conversations with my dad. So for me, growing up, I can't really speak to the growing up part as a child because I didn't, well, early childhood, should I say, because I didn't have that experience. It wasn't until pretty much high school when I wanted to do certain things or wanted to have certain conversations or began to see more. And then that's when I started questioning a lot of things.
I got you. Okay. So basically, you were okay until you got older and you wanted to spend time with him, wanted to have, as you said, conversation, talk with him. And did he just reject you or reject that type of time with you?
So in short, my dad was always, for lack of better terms, a compulsive liar. So my dad was he's the smooth talker. Like he's the one that's going to say everything you want to hear, but
Okay.
not execute it. And so growing up, I am the oldest of my mom's children, but I am the second oldest of my dad's children. And so I am the second oldest of roughly 15 kids on my dad's side. And so having so many
15 children.
siblings,
Okay.
yeah, so with having so many siblings on my dad's side and then growing up middle school, high school age, and beginning to see like he would go and get them or he would take them every summer or he would do this stuff. And I was like, so why did you never come and get me? And so that's when things started to spiral for me, when I started realizing the relationship that he had with my siblings versus the lack of relationship that I had. And so it wasn't necessarily that I wanted to go with him. I think it was more so I wanted to be around these siblings that I knew that was always with you, but I wasn't. So I really could care less. I mean, sadly, but I could care less that it was whether or not I was with him. It was more so I have other siblings that go with you and I
So did that come out as favoritism to you?
don't.
And I'm just trying to make sure I understand because what I hear you saying is you weren't you there wasn't his absence or absence of relationship with him. It was that your other siblings did have the relationship. So did you interpret that as he favored them over you?
In a sense, I guess um being younger, I mean, I guess looking back on it, it could be that. And it
Okay.
could also been I had conditioned myself to know he was not there anyway, so it didn't matter until I started seeing the relationship with the other siblings, and I'm like, well, we never did anything, or we never did, I never went with you, or I never went because my dad moved. Um, and I
Mhm.
don't know if you know, but I'm from Michigan, so as a child, I grew up. My
Okay.
dad also lived in Michigan, and then around age 8 or 9, he moved to Wisconsin, which is where he was raised as a younger kid, and so he moved back to Wisconsin. And then when he moved to Wisconsin, he would then get my siblings. And so when I found out about that, and I was like, well, why doesn't he come to get me? And so it could have been, like looking back on it, yeah, it may have been that sort of like jealousy, like, okay, well, I'm your oldest child, so why
Yeah.
do you spend more time with them? And I've been here way before they were even born. So
Okay.
potentially.
Yeah. Yeah. Some rejection.
Hmm.
Accepted them, some
Right.
rejection of you. So, Valencia, tell me, how did your daddy issues come to be? He wasn't in the home, so did he not spend time with you? Tell me about that.
So mine is similar in that I didn't realize it was an issue when I was younger. I didn't see it as an issue.
Mhm.
Honestly, because I was used to him not being around, it
Okay.
was a norm for me. So I
Okay.
didn't see it as an issue. And
Mhm.
then when you are raised around other children who have
Mhm.
a similar situation, you don't see it as a problem really until
Yeah.
you're older and you start meeting people who have these relationships that you are not familiar with, these relationships with their dads that you are not familiar with.
Okay. Other
So,
people, like friends, they have relationships with their dad. Is that what you're
right.
saying?
Or like your peers from other schools who may talk about father daughter dances. Whereas at the school that I was attending, we didn't have those.
Mhm.
And the majority of us didn't were living in.
Not mine either. I promise you, we didn't have father daughter dances. Okay.
So I couldn't relate. And so a lot of times you didn't think it or know it was an issue until somebody shed light on it. But
Yeah.
like I said, because it was such a norm, I was just so used to it being me and my mom and
Mhm.
my older brother that I didn't see an issue with it. It wasn't until my senior year of college,
Okay.
we had a limited amount of tickets. I'll never forget this. We had a limited amount of tickets. And to be honest, it never really bothered me that he wasn't around. Now
Mhm.
I know him. I'm familiar with, we know each other,
Okay.
but there was no time spent
Okay.
with each other. But anyway, so it wasn't until my senior year of college, we had a limited amount of tickets, and I invited the people, that I thought should come to my graduation.
Was he one of them?
He was one. So
Okay.
getting to, I think, a day or two before the graduation,
Uh-huh.
I got a call saying he wasn't going to be able to make it
Okay.
because the person that was going to accompany him to Atlanta, because that's where I was going to college, was not going to be able to come with him.
Okay.
And so that bothered me because I didn't feel like he needed anyone to come with him
Mhm.
to come to my graduation. So that was when stuff hit the fan. And I enjoyed my graduation, but after the fact, I ended up having a conversation with him because that's when it was the tip of the iceberg for me.
Okay. Okay. So let's move ahead and talk about how you all have seen this daddy issue, absence of dad, neglect of dad, rejection of dad. How has that played itself out in your own behavior and your relationship with others? Can you just give me a little bit of what do you know is in your behavior, it shows itself in your relationship, and you know it's because of your daddy issues.
So for me, and I know I shared with you on a personal level, but one of the biggest things for me is my intolerance for liars. Um, so for me, it's a non-negotiable for me because I'm not a liar,
Hmm.
and I don't like to be lied to. And so I'm also a very direct person. And so I feel like if I can shoot straight from the hip,
Yeah.
Hmm.
to me, it's like I show you that my skin is tough enough for you to give me the same respect. And so when you one lie to me, and then also you try to sugarcoat things, like it's just a non-negotiable, and it's an intolerable for me. And so I
Okay.
know for a fact that came from my dad because I was lied to all my life. I was lied to, and I had the very similar situation with the graduation. I actually invited my dad to my high school graduation and my college graduation. I
Mhm.
did not invite him to my. I got a master's as well, but I did not invite him there. Uh,
Okay.
but very similar situation with inviting him and then him not coming. And then not only did he not show up, but he created this magnified story as to why he didn't show up. And so I'm just like, child, this is typical, like you've been doing this all my life. So it was like one of those situations like, oh, okay, cool. I'm sorry you couldn't make it. I hope all is well with you. And that was it, because I don't want to hear the story. And so for me, there are a few things, but the prominent one is definitely like my intolerance for like people who lie.
Okay. All right. What about you, Valencia?
It's
What have you seen in your behavior that you know the root cause of it is your daddy issues?
it's similar but not the same. So if
Okay.
you say something, do what you say you're going to do.
Okay.
Be a person of your word. I try
Mhm.
not to make promises or tell people that I'm going to do something and I don't do it.
Okay.
I rather not. I rather say I may or may not be able to do that, and then I show up.
Hmm.
But making promises and not holding to your promises or keeping your word, that definitely has bothered me.
Okay.
So
You
I
know,
can.
I was sharing on last week the ways in which these daddy issues manifest in our lives, and um, it's interesting because they are somewhat different in men and women. And I'm wondering now, y'all just kind of gave me this aha moment because one of the ways that we see daddy issues in men is their lack of commitment, right? And I'm wondering if that becomes that man who then has a child who is not able then to commit, not able, not just commit to the mom, but not able to commit where the child is concerned. And so he makes promises that he doesn't keep. So I'm just wondering now, I may have to do some research on that, but I'm kind of seeing a little connection there. because we do know that, boys grow up to be men and they have their own issues. And then those issues affect their relationships or their behavior with their children.
For sure.
So just food for thought, just food for thought. Are you ready to take your business to another level? Are you looking for a way to engage with new clients? We have a spot just for you. Conversations with Linda is now accepting applications for new sponsors on our show. Visit lindawillisempowers.org for more information. We can't wait to start a partnership with you. I just want to remind our audience that we are talking about daddy issues. It was so pressing. The comments were just amazing. The comments were deep, y'all, because we've got some daddy issues. And I've asked Shanae and Valencia to be on the show today because they shared personally some things that I thought would resonate with you publicly. And they were willing to be vulnerable and share, because we've got work to do. We've got some healing that needs to take place. I want to ask you all two more questions because my ultimate goal of this show is to get to the process of healing. Last week, I ran out of time. We were laying the foundation, but my ultimate goal tonight is to get to the process of healing. But I want to jump to some things that you all shared with me. And, now I'm going to push you a little bit. All right.
That's fine.
Shanae, you told me that you had daddy issues and that you ended up having a beautiful little girl and her dad didn't turn out to be, what you thought he was going to be. So then there's another case of daddy issues. And so what I wanted to know is, having had your experience, your own experience, how did you end up choosing a dad
that acts like my dad?
Yeah. Come on.
Listen, let me say something.
Come on. I'm trying to be delicate with
I told you, Pastor Linda, shoot me at the hip, honey. But so that's one thing that I kind of joked about early on. Like, of course, my baby is 10, she'll be 11 earlier part of next year. So so earlier on, I used to make that joke, like, I vowed to never date people that acted like my dad. Like, I always said that. And then here I am 10 years later with a child by a man who is an exact replica of my dad. And so I say that because with the healing, and I know the ultimate goal is the healing process. And so I would like to say that my dad and I are in a better place. And also I traveled to see my dad. So I did initiate this healing because I traveled to Wisconsin to see my dad. Made a trip. Chloe's dad and I went to Wisconsin and spent like a 4-day weekend in Wisconsin with him. The entire time I was in Wisconsin, this man acted as if Chloe's dad was his son and I was the girlfriend. Like that was the dynamic of that entire weekend. And so I statement again because I struggle with holding my tongue. So I'm like, I came all the way here to build a relationship with you, and you took more so to him than you did to your own child who you claim to want a relationship with. This man said, he just reminds me so much of myself. And it was at that moment. It was at that moment that I knew. It was at that very moment that I knew, because I'm like, how? And so for me,
so Shanae, did you not see any of the characteristics?
So when and I will share, like, Chloe's dad and I, though we were in a relationship, we fell into a relationship. Like, that wasn't a pursuance.
That's a whole nother show.
Exactly. So that relationship wasn't a pursuance for me. And so when that relationship happened the way it happened, it was already one of those situations like, child, I wasn't even supposed to be here. So it wasn't a situation where I faulted, like, dang, like, I thought you were better than this. It was a, child, what is this? Like, what? So that's why that was the way that was. And so for him to say that, it just further confirmed how I had already felt anyway. And I was like, child, I already know. And so
Shanae, let me just say, my theory is that, relationships are mirrors. It reflects our beliefs. It reflects what's going on in our subconscious. And I think that oftentimes we pursue, unbeknownst to us, I'm talking about on the subconscious level, we attract, even pursue relationships that mirror, that are familiar to us, that mirror those relationships with our dad. I have to have a whole nother show to kind of tell you how that happens.
Bring me
But
on.
it happens more often than not.
Bring me back for that.
Okay,
But
okay.
and I say that, and I'll let Valencia go, but I'll say that because I absolutely agree. Like I
Okay.
said before because I own my stuff, and so I
Yeah.
said, I was like, even in those moments of me always telling myself, I never talk to nobody that act like him. Like I'll never do this, I'll never do that. For me to then trip up into a situation that mirrors that of my dad, and so I was like what? And so I fought myself for a while for that, because I knew, like I saw it, but it was one of those like, it's fun because he foolish, like he goofy, he fun, he joking.
Yeah.
Those are all the characteristics of my dad. Like my dad is a jokester. My dad.
You just wait a minute. You just tapped into something. You got it. There's your answer right there. Because usually he also possesses the good qualities that your dad had as well. So we'll have to come back for that. Okay, girl, we got to come back for that. I got to get to this healing process. Valencia, quickly, I want you to tell me. And every time I get to you, I have to say quickly. I'm so sorry.
Look, am I long-winded or something?
No, I think Shanae is a little long.
Sorry.
And I get so engrossed in her answer. Then by the time I come up to you, then I'm trying to make up for lost time. Okay, so that means I'm gonna have to have y'all on separate shows, right? So you told me that you realized that your dad's absence was an issue because your love language is quality time.
Yes.
All right, that's what you told me.
Right.
So unpack that for me. Unpack this quality time versus being with in the dad issues.
So growing up, and this is what I stated earlier when I said I know my dad and he's around, but as far as spending time, that was a no. So if I invited him to something, he may show up, or
Okay.
if it's Christmas or my birthday, I'll get a gift.
Uh-huh.
But that meant nothing to me, especially as I got older.
Okay, because quality time was important to you.
Correct.
Okay.
So even if it's a phone call,
Mm-hmm.
calling to check in on me, or even spend a little bit of time with me, I don't require much time, just
Okay.
quality time. So
Okay.
receiving gifts is not, I don't receive that as love.
Okay. And I raised that question because I thought that was so interesting that you said that. Because, as parents, we usually love children the way we were loved. So if we were the kid that got the gifts but not the time, if we're not careful, that's the way we'll treat our children. We'll give them gifts because that's all we know in the way of expressing love. But I thought it was interesting that you said that because someone else could say, well, I wish I had gotten a gift from my dad. I believe I think Shanae talked about in the comment section last week, she had only received $14 and something. Is that right, Shanae?
That was me. Yeah.
So you got the gifts, Valencia. You didn't get the time.
True, and to go back to your comment about we give or we provide the love language as it was given to us, I don't think that was the case, honestly, in my situation.
Okay.
I just kind of think that was a substitute or I did something type of thing.
Sure.
I don't, that's just my personal opinion. Because like I said, it was birthday, Christmas.
Oh, gotcha. So one other question, Valencia, I'm gonna direct this question to you because I keep giving you the short end of the stick.
Thank you.
I got to have you back on, but I'm gonna have to have you and Shanae on two totally different shows.
Okay.
I thought it was interesting too that you made the comment to me that having daddy issues has not turned you off or against marriage. It actually made you want to get married. And you talked about, seeing your mom work so hard as a
Yeah,
single mom. So
yeah.
expound on that a little bit for me.
So seeing my mom raised me, by herself and my brother. Um,
Uh-huh.
my mom has always worked two jobs for as long as I can remember. It has always either been two jobs or three.
Okay.
And she did what she had to do. She took care of her children.
Uh-huh.
But I also understand that having help or a partner could have made things easier. In a good partner, it
Okay.
could have made things easier. And my mom has been married before, and so she speaks highly of marriage.
Okay.
But that is definitely strengthened my desire to be married because I do understand that there is something missing when
Hmm.
both parents aren't there. And I do believe children can learn from both parents. There's something that a child, girl or boy, can learn from both parents. And then I just love love. That's just how I am. I love love. And so
Okay.
yes, I definitely desire to be married and just to have a partner in life
Sure. Sure.
to do things with. Yes.
Okay. All right. I love it. I love it that you can own it. Listen, I have so much I want to unpack with the two of you. Will you all promise to be on another show? Because we're just going to talk about relationships in general. Now, I want you to stick around for this show because I want to go through the healing process with you and the viewing audience. But will you all promise to come back to conversations with Linda and just talk about relationships in general?
Now, Linda, we told you we don't make promises, but we go,
Oh, okay. I'm sorry, you got daddy issues. All right.
we will make it happen.
Okay, okay. I'm sorry. I got it. I'll stand corrected. So I want to move this conversation forward because I'm sure as you're listening to Shanae and Valencia, you're having some flashbacks or recounting some things that you experienced with your own dad that may still be an issue. And as a good counselor, a good therapist, it's important that we don't just open people up, but we also close them. That we don't leave you just open and bleeding, if you understand what I mean. Um, I said on last week, and I'll say it again this evening, that we can't just talk about our daddy issues. We've got to heal from them. And so I want to take a few minutes to share with you uh, the process of healing from your daddy issues. Uh, Let me just begin by saying that healing is a decision. That's right. It's not a feeling, it's an act of your will. It's a decision that you make. Life in itself is choice driven. You make a choice in life about everything you do, and that drives your life in a particular direction. That choice drives your life in a particular direction. So you have to make a choice to heal, to go in the direction of healthiness and wholeness. Can I tell you this evening that you're not responsible for your daddy's absence? You're not responsible or should be held accountable for his lack of maturity or his emotional ineptness, as Courtney talked about on last week. But you are 100% responsible for your healing. Daddy can't do that for you. The reality is, even if he wanted to, he can't go back in time and undo the things, the mistakes that he's already made. He can't go back, neither can you. And so, healing, moving forward, it's your responsibility. And so, when we talk about it being our responsibility, it's choosing how we're going to go forward. And my thing to you tonight, my saying to you, is that you can go forward either remaining pitiful or you can decide I'm going to be powerful. And I believe that we all want to be powerful. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about that. So after we decide that we want to heal, then we've got to identify what our daddy issues are. Some of us are just realizing as we've listened to Shanae and Valencia that we really have daddy issues. But we need to also identify how they're manifesting in our behavior. And then we need to identify the root of those. For instance, what's your real issue with your dad? Is it that he was not there? Or is it that he left your mom? Is it that, as Shanae talked about, he treated other siblings better than you or in a different way than you? Identifying what's the root cause, because as Shanae said, she really didn't have an issue with not spending time with her dad until she saw him spending time with her other siblings. So it's important that we begin to identify, clarify what our real issues are. I'm going to come back to that, but also we've got to make a decision. I told you it's all about your decision to stop rehearsing or ruminating on the past. I visited this part of it, this process with Cortney on last week, but it's worth mentioning again. You've got to make a decision. Not that thoughts won't come. Remember, I gave you the example that birds of the air can fly over your head, but it doesn't mean they have to make a nest in your hair. Thoughts will come. You will have glimpses of the past, but it doesn't mean that you have to be consumed with those thoughts. You don't have to let those thoughts take you back to those negative feelings. You can have the thought and say, oh, okay, that was in the past, and move on. I know it seems like it's impossible, but you're just a decision away from healing. Then I mentioned too on last week reframing and reconceptualizing the narrative. What's the narrative? The narrative is the story, how you rehearse or how you write in your mind and heart how it all happened. Usually, our narrative is I was the victim of my daddy's actions, he was the perpetrator. But I suggest to you that you have the power to rewrite that narrative, that you don't have to be the victim in your story. You can write your story as you were the hero. What do I mean by that? Well, when you look at it, you survived. Whatever dad didn't do or did do, you survived it. That makes you the hero. Then, in rewriting the story, reconceptualizing the story, you can bring other characters to the forefront. Rather than focusing on what dad did, what about focusing on what other people did to substitute, make up for what dad didn't do? I told you how my brothers were there for me and they affirmed me. So, what about moving dad to the background and bringing those other people who were more meaningful or more significant, who made a positive contribution to your life? What about bringing them to the forefront? And so when you tell the story and how they made a difference in your life. That's called rewriting the narrative. The other thing, okay, this is all a part of our healing process. I'm just trying to help you here, is releasing yourself from that. Not just from the narrative, but from the issue, even in your present life. Now, what does that require? That requires forgiveness. Yeah, that's that word we don't, it's hard for us to swallow, but forgiveness is necessary if you're going to heal from your daddy issues. What do I mean when I say heal? What do I mean when I say forgive? Forgiveness means to let go. It doesn't mean that you deny that dad did the things that he did. It doesn't mean that you excuse it. It means that you let it go. It means that you let daddy off the hook, write that debt off your life, and you move forward. Dad doesn't have to give you an apology. Dad doesn't have to come in and give you new things or spend more time with you now for you to forgive him. Forgiveness is an act of your own will. It is your decision to say, you know what? You don't owe me anything. I'm good. I can take it and make it from here. That's what forgiveness is.
The other thing, now this may be a little controversial, but I think there's some merit to this, is that you can reparent yourself. Reparent yourself. Now, how do you do that? Well, that validation that you wanted from dad, what about getting in the mirror and validating yourself? What about being to yourself what you wanted, not just dad, maybe your mom, whatever you wanted from someone else, be that to yourself. You know, if it's a hug, you can put your own arms around your own self and hug yourself, embrace yourself. You can spend time with other people and make new meaning in your life. That's called reparenting yourself. You may not know this, but the subconscious part of you does not know what's real or imagined. And so it doesn't even know when it's another person doing something to you or yourself. That's how we end up getting anxiety, is because we imagine something happening to us, the worst thing happening to us, and the subconscious takes it in as being real. So when you think about it, when you give yourself that hug, to your subconscious, that's just a good old hug. It doesn't even know it's coming from you. It just feels like a hug. When you affirm yourself and tell yourself you're proud of you, the subconscious takes that in as a validation and an affirmation. Doesn't even it doesn't even bother the subconscious where it comes from. It does the trick. So you can reparent yourself. I want you to just think about these steps that I'm giving you and take one at a time, and begin to the process of healing. Begin the journey to wholeness and healthiness. So, lastly, you cannot start over. You cannot undo what's already been done, but you can start anew. You can write a different ending, a new ending. Your story can end better than it began. So I want to go back now to Shanae and Valencia.
Uh, Thank you, ladies, for just listening as I shared tonight. Did a little teaching tonight. What are your thoughts as you listen to me share these steps in the process of healing? What has worked for you? Or has any of them worked? Or are you still struggling with one of these steps?
Valencia, I'll let you
Shanae, you
go.
mind if I go? You mind if I go first?
I'm going first this time.
Okay. And I've shared some of this with you, Pastor Linda, before on another show. But for me, the piece you stated about letting it go, not just for the sake of the dad, but for yourself, letting it go.
Mhm.
For me, I wasn't looking for an apology.
Okay.
I wasn't necessarily looking for an explanation. I
Mhm.
just wanted effort. That was my thing. I
Yeah.
just wanted effort. And so for me, that process began with I wrote a letter to my dad,
Mhm.
as I've explained to you before. I mean, it was an idea that I got from a mentor. I wrote a letter to my dad because I didn't know how it would come out if I stated it verbally. And I
Okay.
didn't want my tone to be off, or
Mhm.
there would be any miscommunication or misunderstanding. So I wrote a letter to my dad, and I basically just expressed how I felt about everything, the entire relationship. And then I gave it to him for him to read. And I let him know I'm open to whatever conversations come after this. And it
Okay.
was in that letter that it was like
Wow.
a weight lifted off of me.
Wow.
So,
Did, can
and
I ask,
after
did he respond?
So yes, so after it was a while, maybe a few days, a week or so, and
Mhm.
I did get a response so we could go and sit and talk.
Okay.
And it was very on the surface.
Mhm.
And it's still a process even now, but it was very on the surface. But for me, when I wrote the letter, honestly, that
Yeah.
was that was what I needed. And I'm a writer naturally. So I
Okay.
feel better once
Mm,
I have something written down. And like you mentioned, it's not just about me. Another reason I did it, I didn't want to be the wife who kept her father-in-law, I mean, her husband,
yeah.
from having a relationship with his father-in-law, and I didn't want to be the
Wow.
mother who kept the granddad away from his children, because I do understand, even though I may not have had the relationship that I wanted, that
Mm,
doesn't mean that he can't be a great father-in-law or a great granddad, because I have seen relationships
yeah.
where the woman is so bitter
Yeah.
that she's keeping other relationships, she's messing up other relationships. And to me, I left the ball in his court.
You know, you said something that's really profound, and I know it to be true. I have seen some men be terrible dads, but great granddads.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, I mean, I think that again, that's rewriting, reconceptualizing that narrative. That sometimes as they get older, you know, wisdom comes. They get more settled. I think one of our viewers talked about, Papa was a rolling stone. Well, as Papa gets older, he ain't rolling too many stones. And sometimes it's in that season of their lives that they do get better.
Mhm.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Valencia. What about you, Shanae?
So mine is a little similar. Definitely in the I've forgiven him completely. And my attempt, my first attempt at forgiveness was when I made that trip to see him in Wisconsin. So that was the start of. Um, I am a huge advocate for therapy. I've been in therapy. I continuously go to therapy. So even then, when I made that visit, that was a part of my therapy. So a part of my therapy was to work through um, past experiences with my dad. So part of that was me traveling. So I did that. My initial response to him was not pleasant. I'm just going to say that it wasn't pleasant. So my conversation with him on that trip was not pleasant. But
Okay.
I was tasked by my therapist at the time, as we worked through the healing process, to
Mhm.
then have another conversation. Now, that second conversation was completely different from the first conversation, which allowed us to have a conversation, which allowed him to express how he felt. And to your point, Pastor Linda, about them growing older and maturing, I can say that to be true because I see how my dad is with his grandchildren. My dad sends Chloe boxes of clothes. Like he will, like, hey, I need baby girl sizes because I know she doesn't wear the same stuff. So he sends her stuff, and so we have a relationship. And I know, like I said, we didn't have a relationship before. We have a relationship now. We talk to each other. He'll FaceTime me. He'll call and ask what she's doing. So we communicate now. But I feel like why we are where we are is because of the step that I took. Because
Sure.
I wasn't expecting him to ever do it. So I felt like in order for me to mature and in order for me to move past where I was, I had
Mhm.
to take that initiative. And the same applies for Chloe's dad. I use the same exact approach that I use with my dad
Mhm.
or my relationship or lack thereof, or co-parenting situation, should I say? I wouldn't say relationship, but with Chloe's dad and the bitterness that I had towards him because of how he presented to be like my dad. A
Mhm.
lot of those feelings trickled over to him, and so I used the same approach with him. And
Good.
so healing and forgiveness was my thing. And this has been well over 10 years ago. And I will say that. So that this has been well over 10 years with my dad. And then I would say probably in the last 5 or 6 years with Chloe's dad. So yeah, so the healing process definitely took place with me, and let my hands getting my hands completely off of it and realizing that it had nothing to do with me. And that
Yeah.
I realized.
And I just think that, and when we get healthy, then we attract a different kind of person.
For
Often we are attracting unhealthy people because we are unhealthy.
sure.
So our us becoming healthy is really important to our future. Um, I want to go back to when Valencia talked about she wrote a letter to her dad. I want to also encourage our viewers that even if you don't take the step of writing a letter to your father, right? Because some of you, your father may be, deceased. But one of the things I've had my clients to do is to write a letter to their younger self. especially during the self that was struggling. So both of you talked about it wasn't, when you were very young, your issues with dad began, or I think Shanae said high school, Valencia said college. So I have them to write a letter to themselves, and in that letter to say what they needed to hear during that time. So that could go like, you know, Shanae, I know you're in high school now, and you would really like to spend some time with your dad as you see your other sisters and brothers are spending time with them. And I'm sorry that it's not happening. I'm sad for you and with you, but I'm proud of you. I'm proud of you that in spite of what's happening to you, you're still moving forward. You're still, and then you can go on, whatever, because you know what you were doing in high school and you know how you coped. And so, same thing with Valencia. She could write a letter to herself and say, I know you're disappointed that your dad, that dad didn't make it to your graduation or second grade, whatever the story was, I can't recall right now. But those are the things that I have clients to do because again, this idea of reparenting ourselves is powerful in that, and I don't want to get real deep into this because this is a whole nother show, but the subconscious part of you doesn't know what's external and internal or internal. So wherever the affirmation comes, the subconscious just feels it and believes it. So it doesn't matter that it's not coming from him. Giving it to yourself is just as powerful. And so I want to encourage our viewers that, maybe it's too much water under the bridge and you can't write dad a letter. Maybe he's deceased or what have you. But you can write yourself a letter and you can affirm yourself and you can be in that moment with yourself and comfort yourself in that, whatever that season was that you were most traumatized by your dad. All right. And then lastly, ladies, you all I know are some powerful women. You got careers, education, you got it going on. Y'all got to come on the show and tell to me about your dating life. But what
Me? No, just kidding.
Oh God.
I'm just playing. I'm kidding.
but what I want to use in your story is how you are writing a different story, of writing a different ending, writing a different future. And I'm so proud of the both of you for doing that, which is why I wanted to bring you on. And I want to let our viewers know that you have the power to do that as well. That you can't go back and undo, but you can start anew tonight, writing a different ending. Not about how you start, it's about how you end.
Today's question comes from a viewer in Memphis, Tennessee. They ask, how do you forgive even after the person is deceased? Well, I did talk about forgiveness this evening in our process of healing. But let me say to you that forgiveness does not require the other person. It doesn't require their presence. It doesn't require their apology. Because this forgiveness is an act of your own will. It's a decision that you make to let that person off the hook. So simply you make the decision to write the debt off. They can't pay you back anyway. They cannot compensate for what they did or did not do because they're deceased. So you can write it off your books as paid in full. Lastly, when you decide to forgive, I have found the best way to do that is from the heart, out of the mouth. That's right. Say it from the heart, coming out of your mouth. I forgive you, Daddy. I forgive you, Mom. Whoever the person is that you need to forgive, husband, children, whoever it is, I forgive you. Well, I hope this advice has helped you on your journey forward.
If you have a question for Linda, submit it online at lindawillisempowers.org. She's a wife, she's a mother and grandmother, she's a pastor and life strategist. Submit your question today at lindawillisempowers.org.
So I hope tonight's topic, daddy issues, and the steps that I have shared with you concerning the healing process has been beneficial to you on your journey forward. I want to leave you with this scripture. Y'all know I'm a pastor. It's found in Philippians 1 and 6, and this is from the Message version of the Bible. It says, "There has never been the slightest doubt in my mind that the God who started this great work in you would keep at it and bring it to a flourishing finish on the very day Christ Jesus appears." Isn't that good news? That the God who started the great work in you when you were born, when you were growing up, God started a work on you, in you. The passage in Philippians 1 and 6 says, and he's going to keep at it. He's actually working on you now to bring you to a flourishing finish. I'm telling you, your story will end better than it began. Well, I am out of time, but I'm never out of conversation. Until next Sunday at 7 p.m., God bless you. I'm out of here.